All right, I'll call this Grand Forks Committee of the Whole meeting to order. The first item of business is the adoption of the minutes. Actually, it's the agenda. Adoption of the agenda for April the 6th. Can I have that motion?
I'll make the motion.
Councillor Corlett?
I'll second.
Don't need one. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
And let's see, minutes. We have the minutes of March the 9th, Committee of the Whole meeting. Can I have a motion to adopt those minutes? And I see no hand.
Oh.
Councillor Moslin?
Oh.
All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Business arising from those minutes? Seeing none, we move to our first petition delegations, and welcome Carrie. And this is, I assume, our ongoing update on how things are going at the library. Good morning, Carrie.
Hi, I'm gonna give it first to Mary, my board chair.
Good morning, Mary.
1 second.
Good morning, Mary.
Hi there. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, many thanks. And yes, I just fell into a wall, but I don't need to think about that. The horrors of doing this. Both Carrie and I are here just to, first of all, thank Grand Forks and the Regional District for the help and support we've had through this really tough period of deciding after closures, working together with the various agencies. And this is really our opportunity to take a few moments to tell you guys a little bit about what we're still doing behind the scenes, where we're reaching out to all of our patrons, how our staff are doing, and again, just get some sense of normality in this really, really awkward time. So my thanks very much are to the city and the regional district. And I also want to take this opportunity to thank the board members that have been closely involved in all the decisions that are made. We meet online every other week with Carrie and to approve various decisions that she's made, programs that we're interested in, and us too feeling that we're part of this whole system. In particular, I'd like to thank our library staff who are working from home, who are devising programs, and Carrie will tell you a few more details about that. I just wanted to start though, I took a quick look last week, and we had a wonderful welcome to story time with Lizanne Eastwood, who's one of our great staff persons. And I took a look at the comments that came after. First of all, the library had 853 likes, which isn't bad, and 21 comments from patrons, some of whom said, "Thank you so much for putting this on." Someone else said, "This is a brilliant idea, will really help all our little ones." Another person simply said, "That was wonderful." So I think this is very much where our role is now. And Carrie actually did it really well. She's also put out a series of emails entitled, "We're Still Here." And we really are still here. We're still working hard. And I'd like her now to take a few minutes just to fill into what we're doing and give you a sense of where the library is in these difficult days. Thank you very much.
So when we first asked you, can you mute your sound? Turn down the volume. There you go. So when we first asked to come to this meeting, we were intending to be just off of our AGM to give you a nice little view of our annual report and just general library feel-goods about all the things that we did over the year. Obviously, things are a little different. We ended up postponing our AGM. But I do still want to share with you our 2019 in a nutshell. So I'm going to attempt to share my screen here with you, and then we can run through it. So here is our this 2019 stats in a nutshell. I wonder if I can make it big. There we go. So you can see we have our books that got checked out the most. I think it's kind of a fun list because lots of them are everything that you would expect. You see all the bestsellers here and stuff. But then this one, our 5th most checked out book was a Tintin comic. It wasn't a brand new one. So that was just kind of a fun little thing that came out of it. And sorry, this isn't as nice as I was hoping it would end up looking. So some of our big news for the year, obviously, is that we renovated the bathrooms with money that we raised all by ourselves. And we also got new public computers that we purchased with the bequest. Huge news, huge thank you to our friends at the library. Not we, I didn't have anything to do with it, raised almost $9,000 last year. That's going to be spent on things that will make the library more functional and more beautiful. So we are looking forward to doing some interesting projects with them this year. You'll see in the top right of the report here, that's how many in-person visits we saw to the Grand Forks and District Library last year. That doesn't count Christina Lake, so that's 67,647 people came through our front doors last year. It's incredible. We also got 352 new card holders. We have about 60% of Grand Forks, Christina Lake, and Area D as active card holders at the library. So we're a pretty well-used resource. You can see here, we checked out almost 90,000 things last year. We offered just about 500 programs, and nearly 6,000 people came to those programs. Huge numbers. We're really proud of that. We answered 8,459 questions, which range from where's the bathroom to what's the best time to go birding in South America. So, huge range. Our Wi-Fi was used 44,000 times, and that's not just people walking by, that's actual active connections in use. Our public computers were used 4,800 times, and we borrowed over 3,000 books from other libraries, and we lent over 1,700 books to other libraries. So overall, awesome year, super busy. We're really pleased with that. And sorry, the screen sharing is more awkward than I thought. We'll get into what we're still here. That's the email I sent out to everyone last week, so that's what we're looking at now. Right now, I shouldn't say right now. 2 weeks ago when we first closed, we were really focused on, besides making sure everyone was safe and healthy, on making sure that we could still offer borrowing services of some kind to people. So we were really pushing our digital collections. So that's what this email that I sent out shows. So we have Gale courses still for free, so people can take a 6-week course from a actual instructor and get a certificate. These courses are really broad ranging. There's how to use Photoshop, how to use Excel, and then things like the basics of interior decorating. So lots of professional and personal development for free. If people have some more time now, they might want to fix their own car. So we were advertising our auto repair source, which is an awesome database that will teach you everything from how to change your wipers on your very specific vehicle to how to change a tire, to replacing your brakes, all that kind of cool stuff. Because everyone is kind of running to legal services right now, I also wanted to highlight our Click Law links so that people can access all kinds of legal services through the library in BC. And then these are all of the things that you can still borrow, even though we can't figure out quite how to give you actual books yet, although we are working on that. So Library to Go is our main ebook and audiobook lending service. It's offered through the province, and we all share a collection, and it's the most like actual borrowing. You put in your library card number, and then you get that item for a few weeks, and then you have to give it back. So it kind of feels real. And then all of these other ones, these audio book cloud, romance book cloud, teen book cloud, they're all provided through Tumble Books, which is a really neat, innovative database of literally thousands and thousands of books for people of all ages. And unlike Library to Go, it's super easy to use. You just open up a web browser, click on a book, and you're reading or listening like instantly. So we really love this program, and we usually, we always subscribe to Teen Book Cloud and Tumble Books, which are the youth and children's version, but since all of the COVID closures happened in libraries, Tumble Books offered all of the rest of their databases to us for free, so that was great. Usually our Tumble Books sees about like 50 to 100 uses a month, which is still great because it's not a very expensive resource. It's a really good use of our money. In March, so we were only closed for the last 2 weeks of March, but our Tumble Books saw over 1,000 uses in March. So people all ran straight to our website to get ebooks and audiobooks for kids. So that was awesome. The other cool one is Tumble Math, which is great for little kids who are out of school because they're secretly doing math while they think they're watching a cartoon book. So it's awesome. And Nobody Books is also, it's one of our book vendors for children's books, usually like educational type resources, and they've also provided their entire ebook catalog to our patrons for free through our website. So there's just thousands and thousands of options available here.
Carrie, we have a question from Councillor Zielinski.
Oh, okay.
Thanks, Gary. I saw that first sheet with all your stats on it and whatnot, and even your users on your other stuff. I think it's great. What I don't know is whether it's better than last year or not. So if you could tell us it's an increase, a decrease, or some sort of a benchmark on how you're doing over last year would be great. Thanks.
Sure. So our in-person visits were down slightly, which is because we didn't have a bathroom for over a month. So when you account for that, it was almost essentially the same foot traffic as last year, which is great because last year we had more foot traffic than ever before following the flood. That also skewed our stats because suddenly we were incredibly busy after the flood. So it's hard. We've had 2 very strange years, and here's yet another strange year, so it's hard to compare our stats. As far as our circulation statistics, this is the first year in about a decade that we've seen an increase in circulation. Regular book circulation in libraries has been falling for everywhere for years and years, and ours are finally seeing an uptick, so people are reading again, which is great. Our programming numbers are about the same, which again is very, very high. Like, to have 500 programs with 5,000 people attending, it is really the best that we could hope for. It's incredible, and it's not so much a contest as to how can we do better every year, it's how can we continue to offer these amazing services year over year.
Yeah, just an add on that, you're saying that the computers are used quite a bit, and after the flood, you saw a rush of people in there. Without the doors being open, are we going to have people out there that are going to struggle for applying for some of these government grants?
Absolutely. Our computers are very heavily used for these types of programs. That's one of the things that we have been discussing in my, I meet with all of the library directors in the province once a week right now on Zoom, and that's one of the things that we are discussing all the time. Like, how can we still manage to help people? And right now we haven't found a safe way to do it, but we are discussing with them. We've turned up our Wi-Fi, so our Wi-Fi has a bigger range if someone has their own device and can access it outside if they don't have the internet at home. But yeah, as far as using our devices, we haven't found a way around it, and you're right.
That's an excellent question, Councillor Zelinski, and I think we should put that on the list of things that we try to tackle here, since most of the services being made available are coming online. Sorry, Carrie, go ahead.
That's okay. I think that's really everything that I had to share with you guys today. We're hoping, provided life remains somewhat steady for the next few months, that we're going to start seeing you guys about every quarter after after Councillor Zelinski asked that there be more communication with the council. We thought about how best to do that, and we thought that these delegations are probably the best way to keep you guys apprised of what's going on here. I'll take more questions, but I just want to say thank you for your time here, and that's all I got.
Councillor Zelinski is first.
Yeah, I just want to jump in and ask how the roof is hanging in there.
We were wondering if you would ask that. We had a really bad leak in December. Only one buck managed to get hit just because it was in a lucky spot, so we only had one buck casualty. But it was a bad leak, and Steve Howard from Public Works had a look, and all he could do was some mitigation measures to dry out the insulation, but there's no repairing our roof.
Councillor Korolak.
I just would like to congratulate you on managing to come through a few tough years, and I think that our library is excellent and you provide great services, and I can't believe how well used your library is at any given time, whether it's people using the computers, the kids, or the ladies that go there to knit. It's just amazing to me, so congratulations.
Speaking of the knitting ladies, thank you. The thing I did forget to share is that we are working on getting many of our regular programs happening again using the Zoom platform. So we've had some storytime videos that have been posted, but we might be able to do some live story times. We're hoping to have some of our speakers still come in and speak via this platform, and see if people want to come for some of our get-together programs, like the Writers Guild. We're hoping to do the Poetry Cafe over Zoom. Really, we're hoping to exist as normally as possible and still offer all of our awesome programs just from the comfort of your own home.
Do we have any questions from the public, Les?
I don't see any, no.
Question from Councillor Thompson.
Well, thank you. I just wanted to compliment the library on the programs that they are offering now through the internet, and it's really a pleasure to learn how many people are actually taking advantage of it. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'd certainly like to repeat that. You're, one of the high bars for a nonprofit society is very healthy, well run, and I'm really particularly impressed with the fact that you keep up with technology and that you're really concentrating on things you can do for children right now. I think that's so important for our community. So Carrie and Mary, thank you very much. Mary, we kind of left you out. Do you have any final comments to make?
I know I'm here. Can you hear me okay?
I can.
Good. I'm sitting around the corner so Carrie and I don't sort of call each other out. No, this was just a really heartfelt thing on our part to thank everybody, thank our staff, our board, and all you funders. We really, really appreciate everything. I also think, if I can speak for Carrie a little, the connection she's made with staff in both Grand Forks and the regional district has been a huge help for us as well. So we're looking forward to good days.
Great. All right, no further questions then. Thank you very much, Carrie and Mary. That was a great presentation showing Grand Forks spirit.
Okay.
I can speak to
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, we're moving on.
Morris, yeah, we're up right now.
Utility staffing update. And can I have this introduced? Council, you've read your reports.
Yeah.
Yes?
Yes.
Somebody say no.
Yes.
Just,
Duncan, do you want to comment on this?
No, I think we're okay. I think if council's ready to move on, we can move into the water and sewer utility staffing update, I think.
That's it? That's where we're at.
We're showing questions from Councillor Thompson and Councillor Zelinski.
So sorry, I thought you were still on the item before. Yes, we'd like to create some context, and I'd ask Morris and Daniel to just present that report quickly.
Okay, let's hear the report.
Do you want to, or?
yeah.
Okay, so I'll start it off here, and Morris can fill in the blanks a little bit. Ultimately, our wastewater treatment plant is ready to be fired up here, and it's now going to be a level 3 facility that will be manned. That will have to be manned by a level 3 operator. So one of our employees is planning on taking his level 3 certification before the year is over, and move into that. However, that creates a little hole in terms of staffing levels, and so I'll hand it over to Morris here at that point. He's a little bit more the expert on this.
Well, I'm not sure about that. Yeah, we've had to elevate. It's going into taking over the position. There'll be an operator 3 coming this fall, which is mandatory, and in doing so, we have to have another operator in training so that when Dean's away or he's on vacation, we have a qualified operator there. So we posted another position for an operating training 2, and we were successful to get somebody from the inside to take that position on, and that will fulfill our needs in the utilities of sewer. And then that puts a void in our water situation, because the fellow that came to utilities is from water, which was Mike. I can't think his last name. But so now we posted another waters utilities and training for a .09 position, which we are funded for this year, and that will give us enough staffing to maintain our water utilities operations.
And so Morris, just to summarize that, ultimately we have funding in the budget up to .9, and we are required to have, or will be required to have, a level 3 once this plant is completed, and we only have 1, and this is really to ensure that we have redundancy and succession.
That's great. Our present position is level 2 right now, but he's going to be writing his ticket in the fall for his level 3.
So 2 pieces, really redundancy and succession in the future.
Correct.
Councillor Zelinski has a question.
Councillor Zelinski.
Councillor, you're muted.
That's better. So we've got a few of these technical items in our agenda today. I'm assuming this wastewater treatment plant is not a new issue. So I'm going to assume that these numbers are already in the budget that we previously passed. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe so. We're going from one position in waterworks, and basically it's a lateral over to the utilities in sewer. So there's a transfer, a lateral, and then we have in our funding .09 to bring a person in for a full-time .9 position for the year. That's been funded.
And so we will not be asking to change the financial plan or add any money into it. We can cover it, and that's why it's in the committee of the whole, just for some discussion with council, so you're aware.
Yeah.
Okay, so seeing as this is on the topic we talked about, Duncan, any idea on when we're going to get those labor cost numbers?
Yeah, so Juliette has provided me some information that she had actually sent to Ron here a while ago. And just in getting the agenda ready and getting that prepared for today, I didn't get a chance to review it, but you will get those this week as far as what Juliette has provided. And I don't know if council's seen those, but it is some baseline numbers around wages for exempt staff, wages for union staff, and I think some goods and services, Juliette?
No goods.
No goods and services, just basic wages. So I will get that out, depending on how this meeting goes, maybe today.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, on this topic, any questions from the gallery?
Nope.
Not coming forward? Any further questions from council?
Yeah, one quick one.
Councillor Crog?
Yeah, just wondering if we're gonna get a tour of the facility once all of this dies down, like all the COVID stuff, but I would like to tour the new facility.
Yes, that can be arranged. It'll be, I would think of some time yet before that's going to be possible to get through the COVID situation, and then of course to get the plant fully up and running in a manner that we can present it to her, the council.
Probably in the fall?
Probably in the fall, yes.
Yep.
All right, council, moving on to the next item on the agenda. We have the flood response presentation, and I'll acquiesce to the presenters.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor. 1 second, we'll be loading up the PowerPoint here.
Graham and George. George, I know a lot of your stuff's in the highlight report, but a good time to kind of tag team this one.
Absolutely. So, here. Go back to that. I have a second.
All right, can everyone see my screen all right? All right, good morning, Mayor and Council. So Chief Siegler and I this morning will be providing an overview on the freshet outlook, the data coming in on what the snowpack's doing. And Chief Siegler will be looking ahead at the Emergency Operations Center activation and provide an overview, brief overview of the flood response plan that was developed last year with the experience of 2018 in mind.
Councilor Thompson has something in for you.
How do I get rid of seeing all our faces so I can see the whole presentation on my screen?
There's a 3 bars on your upper right of all the videos, and if you see a little horizontal line, you can click on that horizontal line and it will minimize the videos. I don't know if you can provide a better explanation than that.
Just at the very top of everybody's faces, Christine?
Oh, yeah.
There's four.
Yeah, so just do the straight line on the far left.
The other thing is if you do click on view options, it may have another one that says side-by-side mode, and you can select that.
Oh, yes, okay. There, thank you.
All right, so to start it off, 2 memorable scenes from early in 2018. One was about 4 or 5 days before the peak when our operations crews had started protecting the Riverside area in downtown. This is the first berm to go in. A few days later, it was totally overtopped. This is behind the former Whispers of Hope fence. And then another view on May 10th, just prior to the peak of the freshet. This is a view of the Cascade Falls Gorge entirely full of water. 2 memorable images from that year, and just reminded that it is pretty fresh in all of our minds. So as I spoke to, we'll be talking about kind of snowpack and the river flow data, the forecasts, and then I'll hand it off to Chief Siegler. So the BC and also United States has excellent snow monitoring throughout the region. Many of the snow monitoring stations are around the boundaries of our watershed, especially on the west side of the watershed. But what they have is these some automated computerized stations that provide data in real time. So the blue snowflakes are providing continuous data, and they're measuring the depth of the snowpack and how much mass it has. So that gives you the snow water equivalent, or how much water is in that column of water if it were all to melt. So if the snow is this deep, there might be this much water coming out of it. So that's the data that the River Forecast Center and our Emergency Operations Center uses to look ahead at what kind of spring melt we're expecting. We also get monthly measurements at many more locations, and those are being bundled up right now by the BC River Forecast Center into the water supply outlook, which is due out on Wednesday. And so I'll be providing a snapshot of data from some of these stations. So Grano Creek is right in the middle of our watershed, up on the west side of Grandview Park, just outside the park boundary. In 2018, the snow water equivalent was right up here, right up at the very maximum, and you can see that it continued to rise through April. Something that we see here through March, we didn't have a lot of expansion of the snow water equivalent. It didn't rise as quickly as normal. A little bit of snow in the last week, but now we're not as extreme as we were earlier in the season. We're just outside of kind of the normal range, which is good news for this point. Second one further to the northwest of Grano Creek is Mission Creek, and it's about halfway between kind of top of the extreme and outside the normal range. That represents kind of the higher mountain area around Big White and the upper end of the watershed. So still elevated snowpack, definitely cause for having continuous awareness, but definitely through March it did not rise as much as in 2018, and so it's stabilized, and we'll see if that keeps on going. Just to the south of us, one of the American stations that I mentioned is called Sentinel Butte. So if you go down to Curlew and up the mountain, you'll see a nice parking lot where people like to ski from. Go just up that hill and you'll see their Snowtel station. And it's halfway between average and the extreme. Notably, this one starts melting a lot earlier than our high mountain ones and really represents the southern half of the basin. And it started coming down and stabilizing from the peak that it had this winter. And the last point, this is a lower elevation manual station. It's still fairly high, similar in the range that you see from the automated stations. Notably, 2018 was at 238 millimeters snow water equivalent, where we're now about 160. So considerably lower than 2018 at these medium elevation stations. In 2018, when that rain hit the snowpack, there was snow right across the mid-plateau, like Basso Creek shows, right up to the high elevations. So we're starting to see losses at that mid-plateau area. So any questions on snow water equivalent before moving into river forecast data? So both the province and the Northwest River Forecast Center in I should not spell it the Canadian way, it's ER down there. The Northwest River Forecast Center and the BC River Forecast Center has models that look ahead. The models that the province uses are basically taking current conditions, adding the weather on top, looking at how much snowpack is there, and flushing it through their system about 10 days in advance. They get really more accurate after about looking at that 7-day outlook. And then the US has a seasonal outlook, which kind of combines all the previous data from history and gives a probability based on current conditions and snowpack and what we might expect with seasonal forecasts. So right now, these are current conditions. Granby River, it's below average, so it hasn't really started its freshet, but it's starting to rise a little bit, so it hasn't really started its spring flooding. And over the next 10 days or so, now this is a 3-day-old model, we'll get a new one later this morning, but it hasn't really started to show that rise yet, and of course it's well below even what you'd see on a regular 1-year basis. The West Kettle River kind of represents that plateau country between Big White and Westbridge. And you can see with the green line that we're starting to see a little bit of rise. And notably, it's getting this daily kind of flushing happening as the sun melts the snow, it flushes it out, and then it drops down overnight. And we're about to average flows on the West Kettle. Looking ahead, the River Forecast Center sees over the coming week starting to rise up to about halfway between 0 and a normal flood level. So in the coming weeks with the warm weather that's expected, we'll start to see it flush out some of that mid elevation snowpack. And we always are paying attention to the US data because this looks several weeks out. What these blue bars are is probability. So they've got a high confidence, 95% confidence that we'll reach at least these levels, and then a lower probability that we'll get this high. So the way you interpret what is looking ahead over the next few weeks, second and third week of May, they're 10 to 25% confident that we'll get a minor flood. Compared to 2017, that was at 20.5 feet, so that's still a minor flood is still well below 2017, which had some infrastructure and so lower lying property level damage, but nothing like 2018. And then in 2018, in the first week of May, we see 22.6 feet, which is the water level south of Midway on the Kettle River there. So we're well below the forecast for extreme flows. Important to kind of, this gets much more confident in the 2 to 3 weeks prior to a flood happening, but it's one that we're monitoring continuously. So if there's no questions on kind of what we know currently, I'll pass it over to Chief Sigler.
Just for you, and we just asked Graham, what do we want to see in the next 2 weeks? What is the ideal condition? Is it really hot during the day, cool at night? Maybe help council with that so they can kind of measure where we're at as we go along.
Sure, so starting to look at in the forecast, we're seeing warm days down in Grand Forks, 15 degrees and cooling off overnight. This is really helping kind of bleed out that low to mid elevation snowpack. And ideally, we want to see that start to drop quite a bit during April and not continue accumulating as it did 2 years ago. 2 years ago, it was cool and very wet in April, but we want to definitely see some melting happening, and you'd want to start seeing the river come up a bit. 2 years ago, there was so much snowpack at that mid elevation. When that rainfall hit, it just contributed a lot more to the overall runoff. So look for sunny days ahead, I guess. No other hands, so Chief Sigler, do you want to just run from there and have me pass it on? Or?
Sure.
Okay.
John, if you want to, missing anything, please. Sure. So if you look here, what we have is the table of contents. So it's our flood response plan. It's a fairly high-level, comprehensive plan. As you can see, just having a quick look at it. If you go through it right now, this is not a plan that's released to the public, so it's considered an internal tool. And will be for the time being. Again,
oh sure, okay. Yeah, whichever one you want.
Nope, that's fine. Okay. If you can go back. Okay. So again, it looks at the monitoring snowpack, river levels, like Graham said there, thresholds, trigger points. Some things that we have coming up, April 17th, we have a workshop for boundary officials. That'll be, I guess, online through Zoom, whatever. We have a tabletop exercise plan for that day, so that'll be Zoom as well, and that's in the afternoon of the 17th. Okay, let's go on to the next one. So again, Graham mentioned that this was developed in 2018 or 2019. In 2018, we didn't have anything when we had our Freshet event here. It was basically a knee-jerk or very reactive approach. So I'm excited about having this tool. So we're going to be able to be proactive, and basically it sets the framework about how we are going to be able to respond and prepare for this. Respond and prepare. Let's see. One of the things too, we're well aware that this just didn't have an impact on us in Grand Forks. You know, we were hit from Midway, Christina Lake, all over Greenwood as well. So these are other areas that have been identified here.
Councillor Moslin has a question.
Sure.
Yes, good morning. Thank you for the presentation. First off, could I ask you to go back one screen?
Sure.
Thank you. Basically, what I'm doing is I'm taking a screenshot. Okay, thank you. Because I wasn't too sure if this presentation is going to become available to council at the end of the meeting. But here is my question. Can you explain to the public why this plan is not public? Thank you.
Good question.
I can speak to it.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Sure. So this is a tool that provides guidance for the Emergency Operations Center staff as they're planning work. There's quite a bit of information from here that actually gets released to the public, especially in terms of types of flood conditions that would cause problems. One of the things that's important to note is it provides fairly technical overview of not only what could happen in each area, but how much sand and how much tiger dams and how much of these resources would be needed for each area. And one of the concerns of the regional district and ourselves is that this can create an expectation of this is what will happen. And so what the regional district is using this plan for is definitely sharing information and doing the resource planning, but it's an internally focused document. I think we'll look to their communications folks for the portions of it that they'll be releasing over the next couple of weeks, and that's definitely an item for discussion with the council workshop next week.
And so Graham, also just to confirm, because we're basing a lot of the response on worst case measures, you could essentially start sterilizing properties within your community as a result of those worst case measures that may or potentially will never happen. And so you want to always approach it cautiously and optimistically, and that's where we have that floodplain bylaw that we worked with on council on Friday, where we would loop that into some more specific terms and allow us to kind of caveat some of it, as opposed to somebody reading it in a plan and all of a sudden thinking, oh my gosh. Is that about right? Yeah. I see there's a question up there with Councillor Zielinski as well.
Yes, thank you. So elected officials workshop where we can ask detailed questions on this plan is for when?
Friday the 17th. I wasn't privy to the information, but I believe Duncan is.
I haven't seen it yet,
okay.
so we'll look into it. We'll find out.
Okay.
April 17th?
April 17th in the morning.
Yeah, we'll find out and we'll get some more detail on that, Councillor.
Okay, and we'll be able to access this document beforehand so we can ask actual informed questions.
I believe so. You know, we'll pass that question on to the RDKB for their planning and communication events to workshop.
Okay, maybe you can start there. What is the relationship between the city and their plan and the RDKB and the EOC and all that stuff? Everybody out there, please.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Here, Graham, did we interrupt the presentation at this point? Do we have more presentation to do?
There's just a few other things.
I wonder if we could hold Councillor Zielinski's question until you finish the presentation. Councillor Zielinski, could you do that?
Yeah, he just brought the issue up, so I thought I'd add up to it. So, no, we can wait.
Presentation, and then we'll have lots of time for questions.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, can we go back?
Sure.
On that? Sure.
This one?
Perfect, yeah. So, just want to talk about, sorry,
Councillor Moslin, you're good? Okay.
No, I'll follow the mayor's direction and I'll hold my questions. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, just want to talk about the identified resources here. So, we've had a lot of phone calls from the public, so this is good, definitely good information to get out there to them. Anyone right now wanting sandbags, they can call the Grand Forks Fire Hall. We have a supply in the city. We currently have about 170,000 sandbags that are stored here. Over the RDKB, we have approximately well over 200,000 sandbags. So if we need additional sandbags, we can make a request, and that request will be filled within about 48 hours. So it's pretty quick, but we do have a lot of bags on hand right now. And in terms of sandbag sites and sand for filling those bags, there's 3 sites that have been identified again. So those are the Nursery Fire Hall, the arena, and the city airport. So the same that we had in 2018. In 2018, we were fortunate to have BC wildfire crews on hand. Unfortunately, they're not available this year for the flood preparedness. Should we have flooding or flood response needed, they may be tasked here as well. Depends on if they're actually in wildfires, whatnot as well. There has been forecasted to be a 40 to 60% drier spring. So we're already quite busy with our department here, responding to burn complaints, wildland fires, grass fires, other good things like that. In terms of information, we have City of Grand Forks Facebook site. We'll have a link to the RDKB, so to their emergency website. That'll be provided. So that's basically information you can receive will be coming from one source, just the RDKB. That's really the way they want to handle it. So we'll have a link from the city to the RDKB. Right now you can find anything on there from the freshet, the COVID, other emergency events as well. Let me talk a bit about equipment. Some of the identified resources. So again, we talked about sandbags, sand. Graham mentioned that the tiger dams that we had last year in this flood response plan, it goes right into how many we need, heavy equipment identified, and what resources in terms of staffing we'll need to make this all happen as well. So it's pretty detailed. Okay. And this last one here just basically shows how things will be activated right from the RD down. It goes through. Just gonna grab page 3. If we look at the top there, how the information is going to be disseminated. Whether it's just the awareness, the warnings as we enter the flood stage, and how it's going to go out to the municipality, property owners, and so on. We look at our partners, our stakeholders down below as well, through the different levels of response. Currently, right now, the EOC is in a level 2 response. That's in planning for the freshet. Should we have any events, it's also in regards to the COVID-19 pandemic. So, questions on that?
Something if I can point
Sure,
out,
yeah.
Mr. Mayor, and so when we have in the plan, there's what we refer to as thresholds for different levels of activation. At the beginning, we're paying attention to snowpack and river forecast data and looking at what are the causes for concerns. That's that be aware stage, and then looking ahead as we get closer to an enhanced level. And so this is where the Emergency Operations Center has a couple of dedicated staff, Mark Stevens and Chris Marsh, who are regularly paying attention to this, and they're involving the municipal partners in advanced planning meetings. We had our first one last week. We'll be having another one this Thursday after the River Forecast Center data is out, and then there's another one in readiness for the workshop. As we start to see a forecast coming of a minor risk, so that bottom bar on the American thing, that's where that Emergency Operations Center will start to call up more people to work together, and fire service, ENBC officials, emergency social services. So they've already been notified of what could be coming. And this is where the question that Councillor Zielinski asked, I believe, about how are we working together and how does this plan speak to the regional district versus us. We participate and coordinate together with the regional district, who has the overall emergency plan responsibility, but within our area, we are also supportive of risks immediately outside of Grand Forks boundaries. If there's something that we're responding to that's showing up in Manly Meadows but not here, as sometimes happens, and likewise they're supportive of what's happening in the city. We coordinate, but certainly we've got the crews and the infrastructure that those crews can handle. So our waterworks staff who deal with protection of the wastewater treatment plant and that kind of thing would be activated through our internal discussions here, following information coming from the Emergency Operations Center. So that's the coordination level that happens. I don't think we could do it without them. So,
question from Councillor Moslin and then Councillor Zielinski.
Now we're into questions here, are we?
So, anything else you wanted to share?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Yep.
There was a request for questions, so I was just responding there.
Councillor Zielinski had his hand up first, and then Councillor Moslin.
Thank you. Whoops. Okay, Councillor Zielinski took his hand down. I guess my question has to do with the plan. I'm assuming the plan was written in sometime in 2018, 2019.
That's correct.
The plan was written before COVID-19. And I guess my question is, as your presentation goes along, especially when you talk about staffs and working together and capacity, if you could mention how this year's planning is being impacted by COVID-19. Thank you.
Start, maybe Graham. So,
Go ahead if you want.
yeah, through your worship, through your worship to council. I'll start, and I think council's very well aware. Internally, we are trying to manage our human resources to mitigate that risk of spread throughout the entire organization, and that risk of losing all of our essential services or all of our human resources at the same time, and our ability to react. However, at the same time, we have a service that we need to deliver, and so we need to manage that and try to balance those two scenarios out, and that's why you see places like Public Works operating essentially with half of a crew. So internally, we're managing our resources to make sure that we can respond. But as far as the regional district and that external help that's available, that's where I'll ask maybe Graham and George to feed into that.
So maybe Chief, I'll speak to the EOC and then kind of the mass end of things, and then pass it on to you for operations, field operation stuff. So, Mr. Mayor, with the Emergency Operations Center that the regional district has already activated, it's mostly remote, and they coordinate as needed. Quite a few Zoom calls, and when needed, in-person meeting with proper physical distancing. So as the EOC staffs up to a higher level, Chris Marsh and Mark Stevens from the RDKB, who are sharing the duty of EOC director, trading it back and forth, will be continuing that support so that we're not putting each other at risk and not gathered all in one place. So instead of that large room full of people, you might see 2 or 3 people in a room, and then another room, and then some people on Zoom as we need. So that's the kind of advanced planning that's happening there. In terms of the greatest levels of risk that we would see if there was a lot of people gathering, whether at sandbagging stations or the reception centers or mass lodging in case of large-scale operations, evacuations, the RDKB has let us know that they've already been talking with the Red Cross about how to support more of a distributed model, working with billeting and hotels primarily as opposed to mass lodging. And so the kind of advanced planning that'll be coming in the next few weeks is to make sure that those various tools are in place and it can be scaled up appropriately. Reception centers and large community meetings are something that we need to avoid or have appropriately set up so that we can have proper physical distancing, and that's also some of the advanced planning. So field operations.
Yeah. In regards to boots on the ground, it's a great question. Basically, I think we're going to carry on as we do right now, whether we respond to wildland fires, structure fires, things like that. Maintain social distancing best we can. Obviously, that's not attainable when we're say driving to a scene, to and from a scene, whatnot. But certainly on site, we can do that. We can ensure that the vehicles are cleaned up as we do after calls right now. Again, will we see the resources that we had in 2018 in regards to having BC wildfire crews here? I'm not sure at this time. I'm really not. We had crews, I think, up to about 50 people, but again, they were, working in large groups as well to get the sandbagging done. So I think that's something we're just going to have to take one step at a time and see how this goes. And do our best to maintain the social distancing and keep everybody safe and healthy.
And Chief, I'm going to strategically inject a conversation we plan to have later. And right now, one of the primary concerns of the Chief is the amount of calls we're receiving for burns and fires, and really unnecessarily bringing our crew together and risking that transmission at this time. And so the Chief is going to talk a little later, I think, in the general report about restricting burn permits within the community at least until freshet is completed, to ensure that we're not bringing our emergency response crew together. How many times this weekend?
I think 8 to 10 calls.
8 to 10 calls just this last weekend. So they're coming together a lot. That's putting them at risk. And if we want to make sure that we have those human resources available during freshet, we're going to have to reduce that where possible. I see see Councillor Zelinski has a question.
You have the question?
Yes, so just back to the relationship between the EOC and the city and the RDKB. So what I think I heard, and correct me if I'm wrong, is the city is not just contracting to the RDKB to run an EOC. This is a community effort. Our emergency services are intertwined, and between us and Area D, it's sort of all for one and one for all, and we're lockstep with them to make sure we get out of this in one piece. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Absolutely, Councillor, if I could just speak to that.
Yeah.
To the Mayor, Councillor Zelinski. So in 2018, basically, we were the eyes and ears for the RDKB, not just in the city, but also, as Graham mentioned, out in the rural area of Area D. So we would do patrols and feed this information back to the EOC before we had activation in the city here. So definitely, this is a collaboration. It's a group effort. When the EOC is activated, such as it was in 2018, our staff, whether we had city staff and fire staff, were right there working side by side with the RDKB. Absolutely.
And if we're going to direct through worship, if we're going to direct people to this video to watch it, I think it's very important that they hear that we're not a bystander in this process. We're not there with somebody else kind of telling us how things are going to happen. We have that local knowledge. We have that local interest, and so we are part of it, and we're working essentially side by side within those divisions to make sure our local needs are met.
So I see a question from Councillor Krog, but before we get to Councillor Krog's question, how are we doing for PPE, our protective devices? Are we have enough? Are we safeguarding the crews that have? What's happening with that?
Great question, Mr. Mayor. So I'll speak on that. So for the department, we have a fair amount of PPE right now. Most of it's stocked on apparatus, for apparatus that respond to first responder calls. We haven't seen an overall decline in the PPE, basically because BC Emergency Health Services has reduced the level of calls that our first responders are going to. Not only that we go to, but more so what we're limiting what we can do, or they've limited what we can do, and basically they're putting more of the workload on their paramedics, so thereby reducing our exposure to the virus. So our PPE is good. We also have some more inventory coming as well.
Councillor Krog.
Yeah, to back up just a tiny bit, the calls on the weekend, the fire calls, how many of those were for burns that got out of control, like people burning off grass and they take off and the fire department has to come and put them out?
Councillor Krog, so good question here. We have, we went to 8 calls over the weekend. Those were burn complaints, so most of those, all of those, 7 of those were in the rural area, with 1 in the city. So they were anywhere from unattended backyard burns to open burns to a slash pile to 1 resident burning with 2 burn barrels to a bonfire up Morrissey Creek. I don't think we had to call the department out for any of those, so those were more duty officer calls.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, where are we here? Further questions from council or clarifications?
Yes, I have a question. I thought that there was a burn ban province-wide for all kinds of burning. So, George, could you perhaps clarify that for me?
Sure. So that's there is a burn ban province-wide. So it's for Category 2 and Category 3 fires. So basically fires that are up to 3 meters in width by 2 meters high, and then that's a Category 2. And then Category 3 is basically anything that exceeds those measurements and multiple piles. Right now, you still, in the rural area, can have a campfire, so a 1/2 meter by a 1/2 meter.
Okay, thank you, George.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Any questions from the public? Les, are you getting anything in the public?
No.
Councilor Zelinski had his hand up.
Yeah, it was just more on the fires, and I guess we just got an explanation from the fire chief there, especially with COVID being a respiratory illness. I am surprised that we're allowing any fires, I guess, but a question asked and answered. Thank you.
Okay. Are we ready to move on with this matter? Any further discussion? No questions from the public. Thank you very much for the presentation. I think this is really what the community needs to know right now. They need some idea that we're on top of this. I still have a bit of a problem how people are asking, how can we sandbag if we're going to be in isolation mode? I'm thinking that you probably have some ideas in terms of how we might be able to stagger workers and move things around, but regardless, it looks like sandbagging will create a certain amount of uncontrollable risk. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
Councilor Moslin. Councilor Moslin has his hand up.
Councilor Moslin.
Mayor, thank you. I guess what I'd like to, I want to clarify this business about who can burn. Anybody who lives within the city must have a permit. And I'm hearing that they're not going to issue permits. So that's well and good. We can anticipate there'll be no burning within the city. However, I do hear that of the 8 calls, 7 of them were in the rural area, where I guess my question for clarification then is these land clearing fires, which most of them are, is the burning of weeds and fields and that sort of thing, they're not covered by the province's burn ban?
Of course.
And if not, would there be an appetite within the fire department and the regional district to put their own burn ban in place in the rural area? Thank you.
George, responding to that, I understand it is banned in the regional district at the regional provincial level.
That is correct, Mr. Mayor. So the categories or the fires that Councillor Moslin described there are covered under the Category 2 and Category 3. So those fires are currently banned with the exception of the half-meter by half-meter campfire.
Thank you.
All right.
You're welcome.
All right, that's a wrap then for the flood response presentation. And moving on to the monthly highlight reports. The monthly reports by the departments and managers. People have had a chance to read that. Council, can I ask for comments and questions on that report? Everybody's comfortable with it? Nothing jumps out for clarifications? No?
So through your worship,
I see some hands going up though. Councillor Moslin's first, and Krog, then Zelinski.
I'm sorry, Mayor. I'm having a bit of a trouble where we are. We've moved on to from the fire emergency response to the question, to the rest of the report. I did have a question for Public Works. If that's where we are in the agenda, the Public Works report.
Yeah, we're in department managers' monthly reports.
Okay, then I guess what I would like to ask is a soaker pit was installed at 7540 21st Avenue. So I was going to just, what is a soaker pit? Does that mean like a French drain? Is that what you're talking about?
we'll bring Morris up so you can hear him. George, maybe after Morris is done, you can talk about the timing of the burn ban and what that would look like in communication. Sure.
Yes,
The policy.
it's a soaker pit is called a dry well or dry pit. They take off surface running water. It usually accumulates in the spring. So there was a problem on 21st where they were getting accumulations of water in the spring and going into their driveway over the years. So we had a look at it. We came up with a plan, and the plan was to put this soaker pit in.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Crog.
Yeah, under, I think it's under DMAF, under, oh, I lost it. Oh, Saddle Lake. It says staff are working with the regional district on constructing a bridge across the spillway, the new spillway. And we've requested quotes from 3 suppliers, and we'll do construction, installation. Just wondering why staff is doing that. Is Saddle Lake not in the regional district? Or is this all part of the flood works?
So through your worship, we'll start with indicating, I believe there's a report on the agenda a little later on this, Dolores? Capital, approving that capital project within the regular meeting, but Dolores will come up and talk about the need for that bridge now, and that'll lead into that discussion a little later.
Yeah, through the mayor, that is because we have our airport beacon up on Saddle Mountain. So the regional district doesn't actually need a bridge across there for access, but we do. So we're working with them, but they are actually contributing to some of the construction costs because they would like some recreational access out there. But this is for us to have vehicle access to be able to get up to the beacon site.
Thank you.
See if there's any follow-up.
Pardon?
See if there's any follow-up.
There's no follow-up, Neil?
No, I did say thank you, but I think I was muted.
Turn up signal. Thank you means we're done.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Further questions on this? I think moving down that list, it was Councillor Zelinski next.
Christine, actually.
Okay, sorry, Christine. I lost my check.
Thank you. Just a quick question. I believe it comes up in one of the other meetings. Has the city heard anything from Fortis with respect to reduction in their rates? Or anything that they're doing for their customer base as BC Hydro is?
Yeah, so through your worship, I'll answer that piece. So I had a request from Jen, and Jen's with Community Futures, and Jeff last week asking us about our utility rates, and I have an email that I will forward out to council, but in short the response was council's considering reducing the general taxation rate later today at the meeting. Council's looking at also reducing or changing, the implementation of utility rate increases later today at this meeting, and also will be considering waiving utility weight fees later at this meeting. As far as the BC Hydro rates, we're not entirely sure where that funding mechanism lies. I don't know if the provincial government is actually funding that difference or that shortfall or loss to BC Hydro, and if that's going to trickle down to Fortis, and being Fortis's largest customer, whether that'll trickle down to us. So Alex Love is working on that right now, and that's something we'll have to look at. But until we know whether the city will bear that entire loss or whether it'll be somewhat subsidized or fully compensated, we don't want to put that question in front of you.
Thank you.
Zelinski and then
I've got about 4 or 5 questions on the report here. So I'll start with the DMAP flood mitigation projects, and maybe Justin can slide that. The very first RFP for conceptual design consultant. To me, it's looking like we hired somebody to hire another consultant. So if you could explain that to me, it would be great.
Sorry, Councillor, I'm misunderstanding the question.
RFP for conceptual design consultant.
Yeah.
I thought that was your job, so can you explain a bit on what that's for and where the funding's coming from for that position?
Well, the RFP for the design consultant is the consultant that will be doing the design for the dikes through the conceptual level, as discussed on Friday. So that is the design consultant. It's just the first step in that process.
Okay, so that's just for dikes, none of the other roads or other building stuff then, right?
That's correct, yeah, that's for the DMAF, yes. Flood mitigation works.
Okay. I've got a question down on, on the seniors building, or the discussion with the seniors and what staff have come up with the building. We see some numbers on our insurance claim and whatnot, so probably I think on that, please.
So David, we'll get you up there.
Sticker. Yeah.
So I'll leave this off, and then I'll ask Dave to fill in some of the blanks. So this is something David and I were looking at here about a week ago, and it has come about with some of the other discussions and reports that council has seen. But I think in short, we're working with the seniors. We understand that there was a bit of a deadline on their current facility, but it sounds like there's been a request to extend that. I think Daniel received that. David is working on a report. I think we talked about April 20th possibly for that council meeting.
That's correct, Duncan.
And I'll let you take off from there.
All I can tell you right now, Councillor, through the mayor, is with everything that's going on COVID-wise, I had a discussion with one of the seniors representatives on Friday. He says they're not in any hurry to resolve anything, and it could be a few months before they're even in a position to even get together. So I think we can take a slightly more comfortable view at solutions. We're certainly looking at about half a dozen possibilities. Some are clearly more expensive than others, and at this point, as the CEO has mentioned, by the 20th, I'd like to compile at least a summary report of the direction we're hoping we can go. But it's not time sensitive, obviously not. So we've got some time to figure things out.
And through your worship, at a high level, I guess, the options really look like the existing facility and whether that's even a possibility. Also shared accommodations, which may not be ideal, but something that has to be looked at, and also opportunities where they would have the entire facility to themselves and the ability to use that to generate revenue. So 3 high level, I think. Go ahead.
In addition to that, we're also looking at the possibility of repurposing some relocated structures for this particular function. I mean, these are all very high level options, none of which have been costed out or determined whether or not it's even feasible, but that's more or less where we're at with this.
Okay, again, through the mayor and whatnot, I'll just go down to under bylaw services there, the municipal ticketing bylaw undergoing substantial revisions. You want to touch on that and let us know whether we're going to get into any problems because our documents aren't up to date, or where's that coming from?
Certainly, Councillor, through the mayor. Since I've been here about 3 years ago, it was very clear our municipal ticketing information bylaw had some rather large challenges in that none of the bylaws that the MPI bylaw referenced actually included the provision for establishing tickets as a means to eliminate the bylaw infractions. So certainly over the last week, and I'll continue to do it moving forward this week, I've come up with a draft new bylaw because it's fairly clear that revisions to the MPI bylaw, in particular the schedules, are so significant that we might as well start over again and just have a new MPI bylaw. The other component, of course, and I referred to approximately 16 bylaws in the process of amending, really it's just establishing that ticketing format within the bylaw. So in addition to the MPI, a new MPI bylaw will come a whole series of proposed amendments to bylaws that actually enable us to write tickets for For example, unsightly premises, noise control. There's a whole host of bylaws which we're expected to enforce on a weekly basis, and the enforcement mechanism has been to sit down, try and alleviate the problem, because quite frankly, writing tickets wasn't an option, nor was going to provincial court. So it's all part of a bylaw cleanup.
Any idea when we might see that?
Well, as soon as possible, but I would acquiesce to the CAO. I know you guys have got a lot of big picture items that need to be dealt with, so I'm sure it'll be fit in at the most appropriate time.
Sure, and through your worship, as we kind of move through this model of virtual meetings and virtual workshops, we're kind of adapting as we go to see how they fit and how that information transfer works, and it seems to be working pretty good. So we'll hopefully be able to move forward with that. And I guess the flip side is, we're always, and I think all councils, and I imagine this council is the same, we're always looking at that compliance over enforcement, with ticketing being the enforcement piece.
Yes.
And so we're always taking that approach where we're trying to work with our stakeholders and get that compliance without that MTI and the use of those fines. So I think, you know, what I've seen, been a very short window, a very short period of time, but we have some pretty good relationships in the community, and working on that compliance piece, it's been pretty good.
Okay, and one last question down under financial, just for people to know, commenced initial work for 2019 CARIP report. I'll just let everybody know what the CARIP report is.
Come on down.
Or he's closer to the microphone.
Oh, you gotta get on the camera, you gotta come on in.
If you sit there, you're on the camera, actually.
It's a little clunky, but I think it's working pretty good, I'm just saying.
Spin the wheel.
Could put a hot seat right.
Yeah, right in the center.
Yeah.
Through the mayor, the CARIP, as we call it, is the Climate Action Revenue Incentive Program. And through that, we do reporting of our our work towards carbon neutrality. And and as a result, we actually receive some funds. We receive the carbon tax back on the purchases that we have made for fuel and natural gas, etc.
Approximately how much?
It's about $10,000 to $11,000.
This is our own money that we actually put away.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, that money goes into our fund, our climate action fund reserve. Climate action reserve, yeah.
So through your worship, we have to pay tax on our greenhouse gas emissions, essentially, and when we report out on it, we get an incentive to report out on it and receive $10,000 annually for reporting out how much fuel we use. I guess it would also be natural gas, electricity, etc.
Great, thank you very much. Councillor Zelensky, number 5.
Microphone.
Yeah, no, I'm done. Thank you very much.
Other questions from council on the report?
Yes, I have one.
Councillor Thompson.
This is through you to building inspector on the seniors center, and have the seniors, branch 68, approached, to your knowledge, the Slavonics about sharing their facility?
Yes, Councillor, through the mayor. The Slavonics is quite frankly, it's an awkward situation right now. I don't have my notes in front of me, but there's some legal hurdles that need to be overcome first. Yeah, they're certainly aware of the space. They in fact quite like the space, but given I forget the legal term of what the status of the property is. It's basically in the hands of the province, and they're obligated to hang on to it for a period of time. Suffice it to say, it's awkward over there, but the Slavonics seniors location is one of the facilities out of the dozen or so that are being considered. That one in particular is just more legally difficult.
Okay, so there's been no actual discussions with the Slavonics themselves?
They may have had in the past. I believe they've spoken with the tenants in the lower floor of that facility, the Media Association. But there's probably some broader discussions that I need to have potentially with our legal team and the province to understand what might be necessary to free that facility up.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and did we cover questions from the gallery today? Or anything from the gallery on these reports?
Nope.
No, but Councillor Moslin has his hand up.
I'm not seeing it. Sorry, Councillor.
Oh, okay, I can see it. Anyhow, listen, I'm back to Mr. Bruce. And I was going to bring up in my regular report the discussion of the 3 emergency declarations that the province has made. One of them has a lot to do with bylaw enforcement. I was going to talk, but just maybe for the sake of this meeting, just a quick question I have for you, Mr. Bruce. Has the province's new declaration that is putting our bylaw, municipal bylaw enforcement, in charge of their orders, how has that impacted your duties?
Can I jump in first?
Please.
Sure. So through your worship, I'll jump in and set the context a little bit. So there have been orders, and we've been asked to look at these areas and essentially report them to health officers, but we have no ability to enforce, write tickets, or hold somebody that is contravening these areas. And also, there's a big difference between the orders that have actually come out and the recommendations. And right now, the orders are fairly limited to, liquor sales and personal services. And there isn't a lot of more orders in regards to other types of businesses. So we're looking at them, but our scope is fairly limited. It isn't as overwhelming or comprehensive as it appears in the orders. And maybe you want to jump in on that.
Certainly. I will add, through the mayor, that our direction, most certainly in Grand Forks, but my understanding is from a bylaw enforcement perspective, pretty much province-wide, is going to be based on complaints. And that is, if we get complaints from individuals that they appear to be in violation of those very broad orders which the health officer has given, our role is to inform, and try and resolve particular concerns, and in the event we're unable to simply get in touch with the local health authority and have them personally respond to the situations. We're kind of a tool that the local health authority needs to rely on, and I certainly don't have any problem with it. And quite frankly, after being put on notice last week over this, we really do not seem to have that problem in Grand Forks of any particular large, any scale violation of those particular orders. I live right beside Trans-Canada Trail, and I've never seen more than 2 people at a time and 3 dogs walking down the trail. So I think we're in pretty good shape here. Should we hear otherwise, we'll have to obviously take it to the next level.
Thank you. Does that satisfy you?
Yes, it does. I was aware that we were only in report mode at this point with our bylaw enforcement. And I guess a quick question then is, I think Mr. Bruce has just answered it. I was going to ask him, has he reported any non-compliance to the health officer? And I think what I just heard is, no, not at this time.
No.
Councillor Zalinski.
Yes, seeing as the topic's been brought up, I've had a couple emails about people gathering outside what looks like a new community kitchen or soup kitchen or whatever you want to call it. I guess I'm surprised with restaurants closed and everything else. I don't know how that's going to work and whether or not we're going to get groups gathering that we see now and how we're going to sort of comply with those orders and those crowds down if we can come to that.
Yeah. So through your worship, I believe, and maybe I'll ask Daniel if he's seen any differently, or yourself, worship, if you've seen anything differently, but I believe right now the number is still 50, and less than 50 is the number. Now there's some best recommendations for grocery stores and 6 feet distancing and some of those other pieces. But as far as I understand, I think that the number is still 50. I haven't heard otherwise. I don't know. Daniel, no. Mr. Mayor, have you heard anything differently?
I haven't.
Yeah.
I'd like to express my concern that food security is something that we don't have for a lot of people in town. Food bank is just booming with demand and running short of money. We have all kinds of things happening like that. So a food service like this is certainly, in my mind, welcome. Although I share concerns about any congregation there. My only information from the folks at Whispers is that they are also concerned about any congregation outside, although they will be following very safe takeout rules like any other food service. But in fact, we may have to step in and assist with any loitering or congregation in that area. Comment on that?
Excuse me, yes, I have one.
Okay, Councillor Thompson.
Okay, thank you. I was reading over the weekend that someone observed a male urinating around City Hall on the back door or something. And I wondered if staff were aware of that, if they are checking for that kind of thing, and are they taking their own precautions when they enter to wash hands and use sanitizer?
Comment there, Duncan?
Yeah, I'll pass that on to Mr. Bruce. He was aware.
Yeah, that's certainly not a bylaw infraction, I don't believe, and it's certainly not a building inspection concern, although it could be.
Over time it will be.
It's clearly a security concern, and as we've discussed, between the months of April and October, we've increased the amount of our security contract to 20 hours a week. The other 6 months it was 10 hours a week, and I guess it does beg the question if 20 hours a week is going to be sufficient. That's certainly what we've budgeted for. All I can suggest is that we will monitor the situation and react accordingly. These are awkward times, but quite frankly, I'm not so sure that particular situation hasn't occurred in the past, irrespective of the establishments that are around town.
And yes, we are disinfecting, through your worship, door handles and other areas commonly touched. So we're.
Dave, the building inspector is probably right that it may have happened in the past, but I just thought I would put it out there for not only council but the public as well, because that is disgusting.
Yeah. And so through your worship, there is a question from Les.
Yes.
Okay, so 2 questions actually. Let me do myself a quick picture here. Are the public washrooms open?
Would you like to answer that, your worship?
I'm sorry, I didn't...
Are the public washrooms open? Like in the park?
Yeah, the public washroom is closed.
Okay, so with the library being closed and a lot of restaurants being closed, a lot of the people who are homeless, really, where are they gonna go? I mean,
The porta potties.
Put out some toilets.
so the porta potties are open, they're still, okay. So the next question I have is more to do with all the information updates that people get from the news, from federal, from provincial, from Facebook and everything else, I would suspect that some people aren't quite sure. If they see somebody who's actually violating this and they want to report it, who do they report it to? Just so they know.
Thanks, boss. Through the mayor, any of these considerations should be emailed to me directly, or even phoned in for that matter. dbruce@grandforks.ca. As the kind of assistant to the Interior Health Authority, I'm to essentially vet the complaints, and if I can't resolve, then pass it on to the health authority. At least that's my understanding.
Yeah, through your worship, although our doors are closed, our phone lines are still open and people can call City Hall.
Okay, last, is there more? Neil Krog is waiting. Councillor Krog?
No, I'm fine, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Krog.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know what you said earlier is really appropriate when you said that we may have to enforce the loitering, or not the loitering, but the groupings of people that may be accessing the kitchen. Takeout at restaurant does not have people loitering outside waiting. Now, the people that are doing the service need to take responsibility for their clients to say, hey buddy, get your food, move on so somebody else can get their food, and yeah, don't be hanging out. So it needs to be put back on the people that are running it. In the past, they've always said, oh, it's outside our building, so it doesn't matter. It's like, no, it does matter. You're the one that's inviting people to come to that specific area. So I think wait and see what the reaction is like, but if it gets out of control, it's back to that operator. And yeah, that's my comment.
Thank you, Councillor Krog. And we have waiting in line, Councillor Thompson.
Just a question to staff. There aren't picnic tables out anywhere, are there, for people to gather?
What's the
Louis Hagan Park?
Louis Hagan Park. Again, you know, not taking responsibility, but offering some distancing. We might look at putting more picnic tables around that area if it looks like we have to distance people who are sitting there. But I can assure you that Whispers will be telling people not to hang around outside and will be doing their best to keep that congestion from happening.
Yeah.
Well, I respectfully disagree with you on that, Mayor. I don't think there should be any picnic tables anywhere. That just encourages people to gather.
Picnic tables would encourage people to gather, you're feeling, rather than allowing them to separate?
That's right.
I agree.
So through your worship, really when we move down this road, it's kind of education, engineering, and then enforcement is usually the model. So I think our first step will be that education in some of the service providers and working with them before removing all of our infrastructure. Unfortunately, we can't remove, you know, the skate park or the playgrounds, and so there is limited, and that education piece can extend, Morris, with some more of our signage around keeping social distancing. And if we still see a challenge or an issue with it, we can move to some of the actual engineering and removing or adding more. But I think that education piece could go a long way and allow our limited, you know, staff services right now, their ability to continue delivering the services before we get into that. So I'd like an opportunity to work on the education piece first.
Good idea, Duncan.
But are there picnic tables anywhere?
Yeah,
In any of the parks?
Yeah, we do have picnic tables in some of our parks.
Yeah, there's some out there, but not very few.
Yeah, so we would start with some more signage, and we'd start with education, and in those areas where they're providing the food to help, and maybe even work with Boundary Family Services in sharing some of that information, just so people are aware. They may not actually be aware if they don't have access to media or technology.
Okay.
Mayor, we have a question from the gallery.
All right.
Yeah, from Facebook here. Will the city be putting out extra garbage cans for people to dispose of their to-go meals if we're buying a lot of to-go meals?
Yeah, I see a lot of plastic going out in those containers and things, but a good question, and I'll pass that back to Duncan. Are we looking at putting out more garbage cans for the increase in litter that's going to be happening throughout the city?
So through your worship, at this time, I don't believe we've received any complaints or any concerns brought forward regarding that. But if something is brought forward, and we will address it accordingly.
If I may quickly. So there is already garbage cans in all the areas. I think if anything, we could look at a more frequent check on the garbage cans and how full they are versus putting more garbage cans out there.
Okay, and Councillor Zelinski.
Thank you. So just on that education piece, can the planning staff relate to the public? We don't have definition of community kitchen. We don't have definition of soup kitchen. My mindset says a restaurant actually collects money for food. This service does neither. So maybe planning staff can just let the public know how it gets into our planning documents.
And I think that those questions can't go directly to individual managers, but are more appropriate going to Duncan. So you're on, Duncan.
So just so I can clarify that question, it's regarding definitions and where those uses are permitted within the community?
Yes.
Okay, so again, not having all of the history on that, I understand that's something council would like to see, and that there is a timeline to see that. And so I'll work with Dolores. I understand we have some information regarding definitions that may have been on an agenda maybe at one point.
Yep, I've sent this information before, council.
Yeah, so there is some information. We can get that relatively quickly in front of council, and I realize that there is a timeline as some of these things are seasonal. So short answer, I danced around it all over the place. We're on it.
Rebuttal?
Yeah, I guess my question is, with our planning documents today, how does this service fit into our planning documents, especially in the location it is in?
I don't know the answer to that, through your worship, right now. I'd ask Dolores, I guess.
I've actually provided this information to council, so it's, I think, in 2 emails previously. Okay. So the provider has stated...
The mic's here. You can come in the middle if you like to.
Through your worship, the provider has stated that they are charging for meals. And so it does currently meet our definition for restaurant in our bylaw currently. So they said that they are charging. And,
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, further on management reports, Councillor.
One quick question. Do they have a business license to operate?
Through your worship, nonprofit societies do not require a business license, so anything that's operating as nonprofit doesn't require them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that seems to wrap it up on this. Anything further before we leave? Hearing none, moving down the agenda. I see the issue of farmers market as the next issue and last issue on the agenda this morning. Can we talk about farmers market? I've read the report. essential service. It looks like they're going to be implementing a number of stay safe actions at the farmers market, but in fact it really touches the revenue of a lot of small farms in the area. Opening it up for discussion.
Did they not request that the public access only from a specific area?
Into the park?
Yes, so that they can, and perhaps have so many people going in so that they're not congregating?
I'm not as clear as on that. And anyone else know any more on that?
Yeah. So through your worship, I'd ask Daniel to comment on that, please.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. So the board of the farmers market group, they're still trying to get the operational procedures and everything in place. They're working on from the best practices that's been handed down from the BC Farmers Market Association, and looking at the guidelines from the CDC to ensure that that's right. We have asked for a layout of our plan that they're working on, and I did see the group out there the other day standing apart from each other, 5 people discussing of what the layout could be. So I haven't seen anything yet, but I would anticipate to see a proper layout where they can control how many people come in and out.
Thank you.
So they're obviously asking us for some support in different ways, but are we in agreement that they are an essential service?
So through your worship, the province has deemed them an essential service as long as they're only providing food services, correct?
And that eliminates some of the other crafts and various things that people are making there that are going to be separate from food supply?
Correct, and I guess the biggest piece in all of this is we know what the requirements are today. Their intention is a month from now, and the speed in which things are changing, that plan is going to have to evolve and adapt all the way through.
And they're also looking for those food vouchers if we can deal with that, but I believe it's coming on later.
Yeah, so the food vouchers through you, Mr. Mayor. Last year, in last year's budget, we had $500 allocated we actually have about $4,000 allocated to all sorts of little things that come up throughout the year, so there's no particular line item for that in our community support budget. I believe council in 2018 donated $500 as well to this program, and so from staff side, we would basically keep doing that unless council would want to change that.
Okay. Anything further on farmers market? Questions from the gallery or from council?
There's Councillor Moslin and Councillor Korlek have their hands up.
I can't see that at this point.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mayor. Can I, with your permission, I'll ask my question. Yeah, I did read through the requirements for farmers market from the BC government, and they are quite stringent, including trying to control one in and one out. They are a very resourceful group, though, and I'm hoping that they are going to be able to configure themselves appropriately. My question is actually about the vouchers. A report of their coupon program that in the Grand Forks area, Grand Forks, BC, had 35 clients out of a total of 50. And I was wondering, okay, is 500 still an appropriate amount to support this program? They are deemed an essential service. We know that the distribution of food and these services is again fallen more on the municipalities. Is it time to reconsider our donation to this program and to increase it? Anyhow, that's my thinking, your worship.
Thank you, Councillor.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, the official request is only for about $400 right now. I believe the overall program is $9,000 worth, if I remember this correctly from the letter. it is up to council. If council would like to put more money aside for that, we can definitely do that.
No.
Councillor Corlick and then Councillor Crog.
Yeah, I've read through all the regulations and things from the provincial government as well. They do have very stringent regulations, including hand washing stations and everything. I'm not sure how they're going to be able to monitor one in, one out. It's like a living document. Who knows in the next few months how it's going to go. As to increasing the budget, what did you say, 35 out of 50 people? There's still room as it is, and I think we have to just kind of watch what's going on and monitor it rather than just upping everything right away. I don't see that, I don't know where we're going. And I think that's the problem with so much of this and the challenge that we're facing today, and that's the food, the farmers market. It's going to be an interesting thing to see how everything goes. So I hope they can come up with a solution and a good plan, because that's going to be really important to see the way forward.
Thank you. And Councillor Crog?
Yeah, no to increasing it over the 500. If they only want 4, that's fine. It's a good program. Awesome. It gets fresh veggies and stuff into the hands of some that might not have it, but it is limited to a small population of Grand Forks. So if we're going to increase it, then you have to increase the access for everybody in Grand Forks. That's all I'm saying.
Councillor Thompson?
Thank you, Your Worship. Well, I can appreciate Councillor Mawson's thoughts on increasing it. Right now, we're looking at reducing the budget and our tax levels. So I don't think this is the time that we can start increasing our outflows for any purpose, regardless of how wonderful they are.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson.
Mayor, we have a question from the gallery.
From the gallery.
From Facebook. In Vancouver, they've started a project where they have someone monitoring people's social distancing in public places. Will council be considering something like that for events taking place in the summer or the future?
You know, our position on this has been that rather than shaming or enforcing, we're trying to model, and it seems to be working well for most of the community. So I'll open that up to other responses, but at this point in time, I'd like to see us continue with showing the good example as opposed to policing in any way. Opening it up. Councillor Corlick?
I've been walking around town and in various places. I have yet to encounter anybody out there. Everyone's being pretty good at social distancing. I don't know what the change in the weather is going to do, because that's going to change the way people want to be able to move about. And I think we just have to monitor everything and just see where we're going. I mean, all of a sudden we have all these crowds. Maybe we will need, you know, citizens out there talking to everybody. I don't know. But at this point in time, I think we're okay.
Any further comment on that? This is enforcement, question from the gallery, and our responsibility to actually go out and use resources to enforce distancing. So I think the answer on that was pretty clear. Councillor Thompson has her hand up.
Yeah, I think you know, people are pretty aware of what's going on. My understanding is it's some of the younger people that think they're exempt from getting the COVID virus, and they're not. But I don't go out much with having COPD. I stay home pretty much all the time. But I wouldn't like to think that we would have to enforce something that most people are well aware of. And if young people are gathering in groups, I think it's up to their parents to make sure that they are acting appropriately.
Okay, we're moving towards the end of this committee of the whole, and I'll open it up to any further questions from the public or media at this point, and wrap up so many councillors. Does not look like.
So, through your worship,
Yes.
with your permission, we'd just like to close off with George and maybe just giving some timelines and some information about that, the burn permits and what that would look like, if that's okay.
Sounds good. And George.
Sure, George. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, through the mayor, if I could just get Kevin to bring up the spreadsheet that I did. So what you're seeing here is a spreadsheet of basically 2020, so from January to this past weekend, of primarily burn complaints that Grand Forks Fire Rescue responded to, with the exception of the RV fire at Morrissey Creek, and I think we've got 3 wildland fires in there as well. Most of them are out in the rural, but there still are several that are in the city as well. They really, you've got open burns, grass burning, slash piles, to campfires under the bridge, all sorts of stuff. So just backyard burns. Some of them are permitted, but the majority are not. So we're going to leave that up there, but I've just prepared a brief report on this, and if you don't mind, Mr. Mayor, I'll just run through this quickly, just to give you a little bit of background before I give a recommendation. So March 26th of this year, in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, the Ministry of Environment and Climate Strategy, Change Strategy, they issued an open burning restriction across BC. So that was for all categories, categories 2 and 3. And that's right across the province. So that was a collaborative effort between the Ministry of Provincial Health, and that ban is in effect until April 15th. Will we see an extension of this? Possibly, but not sure at this time. So there is some rumblings or murmurings that BC Wildfire, you may see an early provincial ban for campfires as well. So I'm not sure if that will happen or not, but that's something that's I've heard rumor of. So, and basically what that can do to assist BC Wildfire, that'll be one of the measures to ensure that they keep their crew exposure to the virus, make sure that that's limited. But we've also have a 40 to 60% drier spring that's anticipated, so that's going to help mitigate any of the human caused fires. So, and again, really the big ban, that was for high smoke sensitivity zones. So basically the city areas where you have the more higher population density. And the burn ban, really, it's about reducing the amount of particulate that's in the air. So basically you could affect people with respiratory symptoms such as COPD, Councillor Thompson, or things that are going to flare up associated with the coronavirus, also weak immune systems. So I'm just going to cover a couple things about quickly on the policy here. So under the Fire and Safety Bylaw 1965, this language is located on the bottom of the outside burning permit. It states that the fire chief may refuse to issue or may cancel a special permit if the use of which, in his opinion, would likely be hazardous or create a nuisance. So I deem this right now to be hazardous. So, and I'm just going to go through some of my reasons why. So we're currently operating on a level of essential services only. At this time, we still have the open deputy fire chief position. It will most likely remain open until we're able to do a face-to-face, because this is not really the time to fill it. We'll get, once we have the pandemic resolved. So Deputy Chief Pichet, in my capacity, again, to take on special projects, extra workload has really been significantly reduced. Having to action these burn complaints, so related to the permitted cooking fires, it's an additional draw on our limited resources. In the past, we've experienced a higher number of responses to burn complaints And that's despite having the residents having the permitted, or the authority there, so the permits. A lot of these calls that we're responding to, it's basically neighbors seeing these burns in the backyards in the city and calling in and mentioning to us that they're happening, or sometimes they're getting smoked out by them, so they're not happy. Few health and safety concerns to think about here. Attending burn complaints in the city related to the cooking permit fires puts any of our firefighters, it puts at a higher risk of exposure to the virus because of the interaction with the public. Again, the province has issued an order regarding the social distancing, and if we have these fires out there, what can happen is it could promote social gathering, especially on private properties, right? Versus we're trying to discourage it. You have fires such as we went to one on Morrissey Creek last night. There was a group of young people that are gathering around a large bonfire, so it's really people gathering and congregating. Again, denser population in the city than the Area D. We also have the more concentrated population of our vulnerable people here. So again, in the city, we have higher concentrations, levels of smoke. Again, COVID-19 has a big impact on the respiratory function. What else? Other fire departments right now that have suspended the burning, so City of Kelowna, City of West Kelowna, West Bank, First Nations, City of Penticton, District of Peachland, District of Lake Country, and the Regional District of Central Okanagan. They've suspended all open burning, so they're being proactive on this. But basically, to summarize it, we're going to help ensure the safety of our firefighters, and also hopefully reduce the workload. But we're also going to look after the health and well-being of our vulnerable population, and thereby hopefully reducing the transmission of the virus. So my recommendation is to suspend and issue no further permits for the purpose of cooking. And then the ones that we do have out there, we would contact those individuals and have those suspended for the time being. Thank you.
Just so I'm clear, that would start essentially tomorrow, and then after freshet, you'd review.
That is correct, yes.
Councillor Zelinski. Thank you, George.
Thank you. I was just wondering whether George is going to be in further discussions. I know we're talking about a piece of property up Morrissey Creek, and I see a lot of fires that they have to respond to up there. If George is going to be in those further discussions, I'll hold my questions till then. But
I believe I am.
Yep. This is something, so through your worship, this is something George and I were talking about on the weekend. And when we get to that report and we have that discussion, he definitely will have some feedback for council.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, council.
Okay, Councillor Thompson.
Okay, is the fire chief looking for a resolution at this meeting to recommend to the regular meeting of council?
No, I'm not. Sorry, I guess I did say recommendation. I guess that's the action that I am going to take forward. But I wanted to make sure that council was aware of that, and in case they had any questions.
Okay, so you don't need us to involve ourselves in that?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Councillor Mawson.
Councillor Mawson.
Councillor Mawson.
Yeah, I really, I certainly support restricting fur burns within the city. However, so many of our city residents are impacted by burns just outside the city. The College Road area is notorious for backyard burning. And I find that any restrictions, further restrictions within the city would be great, but they're going to be offset by burns within Area D. That until we get a handle on controlling or monitoring effectively backyard burns within Area D, we're still going to have negatively impacted citizens within the city.
Councillor
So my question is what can we do about monitoring and controlling the backyard burns within Area D? Thank you.
Councillor Mazen, you're talking about enforcement because your earlier questions clarified that there is an open burn restriction throughout British Columbia on level 2 and 3, and so that they are breaking a provincial rule or law. But the question is there any regional district monitoring of that behavior through the fire department? Is that who you would assume would have the authority?
Yes, as we share the chief with the regional district, we share the fire department there, and I guess I still see, especially in my part of the world, backyard burning going on. Is the fire chief prepared, or is our bylaw enforcement officer prepared to enforce the provincial order against backyard burning?
Okay.
Through the mayor, Councillor Moslin. So the RDKB does not have a bylaw in regards to burning, so they follow the provincial standard. I don't see any reason, and this week I was hoping to speak with the RDKB and see why we couldn't proceed with a campfire ban as well, as the Regional District of Central Okanagan has done. Right now, what we're out there, what we're going and doing is it's the education portion of it. So we're doing our best to go educate the people versus sitting there and smacking them with the compliance end. So.
Okay, Councillor Corlick, and then Thompson is next. Councillor Corlick.
I have a BCDC meeting tomorrow, so I will bring it up and see what they have to say, okay?
Great.
Councillor Thompson.
Could not the regional fire chief put out a ban for Area D?
Through the mayor, yes, Councillor Thompson. There is no bylaw right now. However, there may be something that special circumstances may relate to. There may be something that can be done, and I will have conversation with the RDKB as well.
Yeah, okay. I just wondered, because you've done that you're implementing that for the city. I wondered if you or the regional district chief would have that kind of authority as well.
Through the mayor, no, Councillor Thompson, I'm not aware that he has that authority to do that.
Thank you.
An interesting question, Councillor, because if it is a provincial rule, but the regional district is not in a position to enforce the provincial rule, that seems like a gap to me that we should discuss further.
Through the mayor, so right now, in terms of enforcing the provincial ban, the category 2 and 3, that is up to myself and Deputy Chief Pichet.
Okay, we seem to be going in circles because you in fact then could enforce people burning inappropriately close to city line or anywhere in the regional district.
That is correct. We just don't have any say right now over the campfires in the regional district.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You're welcome. Question from the gallery.
From Facebook, can the council rep on the RDKB take the fire burning issue to the next meeting?
He has.
Okay.
Councillor Corlick. Councillor Corlick, do you want to answer that?
So tomorrow and in the next, I will make some inquiries and to see where we can, what can happen. Because I'm not familiar with it. But if I don't ask, I won't know. So
that after he asked Councillor Corlick, the representative, will be taking that tomorrow to a regional district meeting for the boundary.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, seeing no hands up, have we done with this meeting? All right, a motion to adjourn. Councillor Maudlin, meeting adjourned.